Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. The alarm clock rang. I reached out and pressed the snooze button to buy another 10 minutes. The alarm clock also woke up my 2-year-old wife, but she obviously wasn't interested in sleeping for another 10 minutes. You know, I don't want to get up and go to work right now. I just want to lie here and hug you. I'd like that too, but you know we can't. My flight to Salt Lake City leaves at 10, and I have to be on it. I think you need to tell your father that he needs a new personal assistant. Tell him that you need to stay at home with your hubby so that you can take care of giving him grandchildren. I can't do that, and you know it perfectly well. You knew what you were signing up for even before we agreed. Yes, but at that time I could not imagine how exciting it would be to cuddle with you in the morning. Dad will retire in 6 months, and I won't need to accompany him everywhere he goes. That's bullshit. It just means that you'll be in charge, and you'll still be traveling on business. That's right, but then you can leave your job as head of security, become my personal assistant, and fly with me. Why on earth would I want that? So that you can learn business the same way I did, being Dad's personal assistant. Again, why would I do this? Because it's a family business, and someone has to run it while I'm busy with the birth and upbringing of your children. She slapped my ass and told me to get up and move on. She took a shower while I was making coffee, and then I took a shower while she was making breakfast. I wanted to take a shower together, but she refused. You know perfectly well what it would lead to if we did that. She was right. So I hid my disappointment and continued my workday. At 8:30, she came into my office, kissed me, and told me to think about the best way to meet her at home the next day. It would be nice to scatter rose petals around the bedroom and put a bottle of champagne in an ice bucket next to the bed. Watching her leave, I remembered how it happened that I married the boss's daughter. It was obvious that she didn't recognize me, but then why should she? We moved in different circles at school. I doubt she even paid attention to me from 9th grade to senior year, and in college I got even more lost in the crowd, but I recognized her. The prom queen, the head of the support group, the girl who is most likely to succeed. She fueled many of my teenage fantasies and made me train my right arm quite often. It's been 15 years since I last saw her, and those years have been kind to her. May I ask who recommended you to me? Nobody. I was in the building to meet with my lawyer, and I noticed Styles Investigations in the building directory. It was me, Hector Styles, a private investigator. May I ask who your lawyer is? Charles Wellington of Farmer, Burns, and Wellington. I know Chuck well. He often helps me with my cases. So, what can I do for you, Miss Parkington? She looked at me strangely and said, I'm Mrs. Elizabeth Markham. How did you know that my name used to be Parkington? I smiled and said, a trade secret. So, what can I do for you, Mrs. Markham? She hesitated, as if she was going to clarify how I knew her maiden name, but then she said, I want you to find my husband. It was interesting. I have been asked many times to find out if my husband or wife is cheating, but I have never been asked to really find a husband. Is he hiding from you? Doesn't want to see you for one reason or another? Most people don't just disappear unless they think they have a good reason to. I have no idea. One day he just disappeared. He left for work in the morning, and I never saw or heard from him again. He came to work, left at the right time, and disappeared. I'm sorry if this upsets you, but I need to know this if I'm going to take you on as a client. Have there been any cases of adultery in your marriage? She hesitated for a moment, and then added, from his side? I do not think so. And from your side? I'm asking because if it was you, I'd need to know if he found out about it and then walked away, leaving you to deal with all the divorce cases. I didn't cheat on him, but I have to admit that I was close to it. Were you close to it? My old college sweetheart recently returned to the city, and we talked. I'm going to be completely honest with you, Mr. Styles. My husband's parents don't believe that Reggie just ran away. They say that none of their sons would ever do that. They seem to think that I killed Reggie and somehow disposed of the body. They have filed their statement with the police, and I am currently under investigation. Why do you need me if the police are already looking for him? I don't believe they're looking for him. I think they think he's dead, and all they're trying to do is pin his death on someone. I'm his wife, so I'm the most likely suspect for them. I need to find Reggie and get rid of suspicion. I decided to take on this case, told her my rates, and she wrote me a check. I gave her a list of things I needed to know about her husband, and she said she would contact me the next day and tell me what I needed. She looked at the list and then looked at me again. I have to know, don't I? Not necessarily. I was just one of many. She looked at me intently, then got up and left. I picked up the phone and dialed a familiar number. The 10th precinct. This is Franklin speaking. Good afternoon, Tony. Is Phil at home? He's at home. Probably sleeping in his office at taxpayers' expense. I'll put you through. 2 rings, and then the detective bureau. Lieutenant Farmer. Good afternoon, Phil. Do you have a minute? I don't know, damn it. What kind of trouble do you want to get me into this time? A client has just contacted us, who says that she is under investigation in connection with the death of her husband, but she does not think that he is dead. I only have one right now. We're talking about Elizabeth Markham, right? This is the one. What can you tell me about him? A little bit. Her husband, Reginald Markham, left work at 5 o'clock on May 3rd and has not been seen or heard from since. No cash was withdrawn from the bank, nothing was found on the credit card, and his car was found in the parking lot at the bar. He was a regular visitor, but none of the staff could remember if they had seen him that day. Only his fingerprints were found on the car. His wife never reported him missing. 6 days after he was last seen, his parents came, told us he was missing, and suspected foul play. We checked it out. Mrs. Markham said she never reported him missing because he had a habit of disappearing for days after they had an argument. She said that one day he was gone for 11 days. According to her, the day before his disappearance, they quarreled, so she did not attach any importance to it. She didn't bother until we knocked on her door. Did you find out anything? We pressed, and she finally told us that the quarrel occurred because of his dissatisfaction with the time she spent with her ex-boyfriend. We talked to the guy, and he told us that all that was happening was getting to know each other again, talking about old times and friends. With the exception of Mr. Markham's continued absence, we have found no evidence of foul play. However, this case is still open. Without violating the client's privacy, could you tell me what she wants from you? She wants me to find her husband. Good luck with that. All we found was a cold trail. If I stop by the station, will I be able to take a look at the case? If you come while I'm still here. After hanging up, I thought about how great it is to have good friends. Phil was my partner when I was on the force. If I hadn't been shot in the right knee, I probably would still be in the police force. I just passed the detective exam and scored high enough to get the next job, but Jimmy Rats, aka Jimmy the Rat, ruined everything for me. He put a bullet in my knee, and Phil put him on the ground. I came to the station, and Phil let me sit at his desk and review the case file. I finished reading the dossier, returned it to him, and he asked, "Did anything about him catch your eye?" "Maybe. Do you want to share it?" "Not yet. First, I need to make sure that personal animosity doesn't cloud my thoughts. It sounds mysterious." I hesitated, and then said, "I think you should know that. I need to tell you a little story. I went to high school and college with Mrs. Markham. Actually, I was head over heels in love with her at the time, but I doubt she even knew about my existence. We moved in different circles. By the way, her maiden name is Parkington, as in Parkington Industries. In short, Daddy is rich, and Liz is the only child in the family. As far as I remember, she had a pretty solid trust fund, which she received the day she graduated from college, and of course, when Dad dies, she will inherit all this fortune. Have you ever noticed that the most beautiful girls have always been attracted to badass guys?" Phil smiled and shook his head in the affirmative. "Well, Liz was one of those girls. When we were in junior high, she slept with a real asshole. He was the kind of guy who finds them, uses them, and forgets them. We both played on the football team, and in the locker room he often bragged that he would be awash in money when he married a dumb fool. That's exactly how he put it. When I marry a dumb fool. It could be said that she meant nothing to him except an easy life. Liz, on the other hand, was head over heels in love with this jerk and considered him the love of her life. I have no idea what happened between them, but one day they stopped being a couple. What does this have to do with this dossier? Dave Barth, the guy she's reacquainted with? The same asshole who was going to marry a dumb fool. If I were you, I'd find out about his past. What did this slug do after college? What the hell are you thinking? You can't marry money if someone else is already married to it. Do you think he might have something to do with Markham's disappearance? I honestly don't know, Phil. He was a jerk at school, but I do not know if he is bad enough to kill someone for money. Could the wife and a possible lover be at the same time? I do not know, but I doubt it. She pays me a lot to find him, and I just can't imagine her agreeing to me digging if she has something to hide. Keep me posted, okay? It will be done. Elizabeth Markham showed up at my office at 9 o'clock the next day with the things I asked her to bring. She sat down opposite me and said, "I can't believe I didn't find out who you were yesterday. You had no reason to know. Yesterday, when I got home, I took out my yearbooks. 8 years, 4 in high school and 4 in college, and I didn't recognize you? How could this happen? There were a lot of people in our high school class, and there were different groups and gatherings. We just talked to different people. There were 10 times as many people in college. In the first year, we had only 2 classes in common, and in the second year, we had only 1. No wonder you don't remember me. But you can remember me, so I have to remember you. We'll talk about this another time, but right now we need to discuss the problem of your missing husband. I'm going to ask you some very personal questions, and although you may not want to answer them, I need completely honest answers. I'm no different from your doctor or lawyer. Everything you tell me will remain a complete secret. No problem. I have nothing to hide. The first thing I need to know is what kind of relationship you had with your husband just before he disappeared. We have a little problem. He didn't like that I was meeting my ex-boyfriend for lunch and then drinking after work. He wanted me to stop, but I told him I wouldn't. During our first meeting, you mentioned that you were gradually leaning towards cheating. Was this the man who made you get close? That's how it was. Was it, and not is it? She was silent for a while, and then she said, "It was. I can be a bitch at times, and I can also be a little stubborn." When Dave, my ex-boyfriend, came back to town, he tracked me down and invited me to meet him for lunch. I didn't see anything wrong with that, and we met. At first, we just chatted like old friends and talked about people we knew, about where they were and what they are doing now. It was a short lunch because I had to get back to work. Dave asked if we could have lunch together again, and again I didn't see anything wrong with that, so I agreed. When I got home that night, I told Reg about it, and he lost his temper. He told me that he was unhappy that I was dating Dave and didn't want me to do it again. It made me bitchy, and I told him I wouldn't let him dictate to me that I would date whoever I wanted, and then everything went to hell between us. I met Dave for lunch 2 more times, and being the bitch I sometimes am, I made sure Reg found out about them. It only worsened our relationship. I kept seeing Dave over lunch, not because I wanted something to happen between us, but because I could throw it in Reg's face. So one day Dave asked me to meet him after work and have a drink. Dave hit on me that night, and I didn't turn him down. Of course, when I got home, I told Reg that I'd gone for a drink with Dave. Reg threw a tantrum. He accused me of cheating on him, and then said he'd better never catch us making love in our house. Otherwise, he'd kill us both. This, of course, pissed me off. Are you accusing me of cheating? Well, fuck you. Maybe I'll do that, just to annoy your ass. And the relationship between us got even worse. The next time I met Dave, did I think Reg thought I was cheating? Well, if I'm going to carry that name, I might as well play this game. And I almost did it. But at the last minute, I remembered why I broke up with Dave in the first place. He was an asshole. Was I going to risk my marriage for this asshole? But even then, I inadvertently left the door open. I told Dave that I couldn't cheat on Reg, but judging by the way things were going with Reg, I might be single again soon, and then we could pick up where we left off in college. Of course, it was all bullshit, but Dave didn't know that. Before I could make things right with Reg, he disappeared, and now I have to find him. Find him and convince him that he's the only man I need. I took the list she gave me and said, "I have to be honest with you. I may not be able to do what you want. I have a friend at the police department, and he told me what they found. Your husband didn't take any cash from the bank and didn't leave any traces on the credit card. I have several sources that they don't have access to, but if I can't get on your husband's trail within a couple of days, I'm unlikely to be able to find him. I'm telling you this now, so you can get your money back if you want. Please do your best and don't worry about the money. If you need more, I'll get them for you. Just do your best to find Reggie." The list she gave me included the names of her husband's closest friends and a list of people he worked with. I spent 3 days talking to the people on the list, and came to the conclusion that this is a dead end. The people I interviewed agreed that Reginald Markham was not the type to disappear just to annoy his wife. Several of his friends told me that he was upset about his wife, but did not share with them the reason for this. His colleagues said that on the day he disappeared, he behaved as usual, and his secretary said that on that day, leaving the office, he cheerfully told her, "See you in the morning." After 3 days, I almost came to the conclusion that Reginald Markham did not disappear by himself. I had to come to terms with the idea that someone else had kidnapped him. I could be wrong, but I seriously doubted that his wife had anything to do with it. The question arose, who and why? To me, the obvious answer was Dave Barth, and the reason was so that he could contact Elizabeth Markham. I picked up the phone and dialed the number Elizabeth had given me. When she answered, I arranged to meet her for lunch. When I arrived at Trikaki, she was already there and sitting at a table. After Jared accepted our order, I said, "I have a few questions, Mrs. Markham. Please call me Liz. I still feel guilty that I went to school with you for 8 years and still don't remember you." "Okay, then you can call me Heck. I'm not crazy about Hector, but my parents didn't ask for my opinion when they gave me that name. The questions I have are about your relationship with Dave Barth. When you first broke up with him, was the breakup painful?" "No. I found out a few things that upset me, but I decided that he would be around until we graduated from high school, and it would be easier if I ended everything a little cordially. I told him that I thought we were getting too serious too soon and that we needed a break from each other. We needed to meet other people to make sure that we were really meant for each other." "And how did he take it?" "He wasn't happy. He said he already knew I was the only one for him, and he was a little angry that I didn't accept it when he told me he was sure I was the only one for him. Then we graduated from high school, and without informing him, I went on a tour of Europe for a year before returning to work for my father. I heard that after graduating from high school, he got a job in Atlanta, and I didn't hear anything about him until he returned here a little over a month ago." "What exactly did you learn that made you turn away from him?" "He told people that he was going to marry me and spend the rest of his life swimming in money." "Why are you smiling?" "Dave and I played on the football team, and he always bragged to everyone that he was going to marry you and be provided for life. You knew who I was. Why didn't you warn me? And get a slap on the head and hear that I'm meddling in my own business? You seem to have forgotten that you were head over heels in love with Dave at the time. You probably wouldn't have believed me anyway." "It's probably true. Did he try to contact you after your husband disappeared?" "Every day. He wants to meet for lunch or a drink after work." "Why did you ask?" "Curiosity. You told me that you told him that maybe you'd be alone again and you could pick up where you left off in college." "That's not what I meant. It just seemed like the best way to end it all was to say, 'You're a fool, and I don't want anything to do with you.'" "I understand that. Do you have any idea what he was doing from the moment you broke up with him in college until he came back here and called you?" "He says he got a job at Chapin and Associates in Atlanta, and they transferred him here." "Why did you ask?" "Just curious." "That's bullshit." "No. You didn't know me then, but I've been in love with you since the first day I saw you in 9th grade, and it lasted all the way to college, so I'm just curious." "Were you in love with me?" "What can I say? In my opinion, you were the most beautiful girl in our class. I wanted to meet you today to give you this," and I handed her the check. "This is a refund of part of your fee. I can't find anything that would give me a starting point. It's like your husband was abducted by an alien probe or something. One minute he was here, and the next minute he was gone." I mentioned earlier that I had an acquaintance at the police department, and from him I learned that your fears are groundless. "My concerns?" "When you first came to me, it seemed to you that the police were not even looking for your husband, but were just trying to find a way to pin everything on you. That's not so. They've reached the same dead end as me. This case is still open, but they don't consider you the reason for your husband's disappearance." It wasn't necessarily true. When Phil gave me the dossier to read, it was more or less true, but maybe something has changed since I told Phil about Dave Barth. I still didn't believe she had anything to do with her husband's disappearance, but I couldn't vouch for Phil. Liz took the check, looked at it, and asked, "Is there nothing you can do?" "I can't find absolutely anyone who saw your husband after he left work on the day he disappeared. I'm at a dead end. I can't find absolutely anything to work with." "I'm sorry." She put the check in her purse, thanked me for my time, got up and left. "I have a problem. When something captures me, I pursue it until I am satisfied. That's where I was at that moment. I lied to Elizabeth Markham. I really had a starting point. Dave Barth. As I mentioned earlier, I had sources that the local police did not have access to. I flipped through my file until I found the right number, and only then did I call. Good morning, Atlanta Police Department. How can I help you? Detective Parsons, please. Just a minute. A little background. I attended college on an ROTC scholarship and upon graduation joined the U.S. Army. The Army decided that I should be assigned to the military police. As a result, I ended up in the Criminal Investigation Department. I made a lot of friends there, and many of them, like me, went to law enforcement when we left the Army, and we kept in touch. 2 calls, and then homicide and robbery squad. Detective Parsons. How can I help you? My left shoulder blade itches terribly. Could you scratch it for me? Damn it. Similarly. How the hell are you doing? How long has it been? A year since we last spoke? That's about it. After 10 minutes of casual conversation, I told him what I was looking for, gave him all the information I had, and he said he would do everything in his power. Maybe I was wasting my time, but I just couldn't get past the way Dave Barth insisted that he was going to marry Liz Markham and live happily ever after. I found Bart's address in the file Phil gave me to look at, and I knew where he worked because Liz Markham gave me that information. So I decided to take a look at Dave. At 7 in the morning, when the staff began to get ready for work, I parked near his company. At 10 minutes to 8, a convertible Mustang pulled into the parking lot, and Dave Barth got out. Outwardly, he hasn't changed a bit since his college days. I called his company, found out what their working hours were, and left to do what I had for today. I returned to the Chapin half an hour before the end of work, sat, and looked at the Mustang. Dave came out at 5 sharp. I followed him as he pulled out of the parking lot and headed for the bar. Imagine that. He drives up to the place where Reginald Markham's car was found after his disappearance. Maybe it's a coincidence, but I've never really believed in coincidences. I probably don't need to remind you right now that I was pretty sure Dave Barth had something to do with Liz's husband's disappearance. I sat in the car outside and waited for Bart to leave, and then I followed him home and watched until the lights went out, and then I went back to the bar. I knew this place well. I've been drinking there since I left the service. I've even seen Reggie Markham in this place a couple of times. I knew who he was, but I didn't know him. The place was owned by Jake Winters, and I had known Jake since our freshman year of college, when we played on the football team together. I sat down at the bar, and when Jake put my order in front of me, I asked him about Bart. He knew Bart because Bart was on the team with us. According to Jake, Bart has been a regular visitor since he moved here from Atlanta and has been here 4 or 5 times a week. Have you ever seen him here with Reggie Markham? I've seen them both here at the same time, but I've never seen Dave talking to Reggie. Why are you asking me this? Just curious. Don't bullshit me. Come on, spit it out. Do you remember how Dave boasted that he was going to marry Liz Parkington and be provided for life? Yes. Liz married Reggie Markham, and I was just curious if Dave might have punched Markham in the face. We've never had anything like this here. I changed the subject to sports, had another beer, and went home. In the morning, I left Bart's apartment and followed him to work. As soon as he was inside, I went back to him and used my lock picks to get inside. Okay, I'm not spotless, but as a paid detective, not everything I do can be completely honest. There were 2 bedrooms in the apartment, and he had equipped one of them for a home office, so after examining the rest of the room, I focused on the home office. I searched the room and the desk, finding nothing to confirm my suspicions, and was about to give up the idea when I saw Carhartt's coat hanging on the back of the door. I rummaged in my pockets and came across gold. Anyway, that's how it was with me. It probably wouldn't be the same with anyone else, but not many people always look for the bad in everything. I found a receipt for the freezer dated 5 days before Markham disappeared. That didn't mean anything in itself, but I also found a receipt from Home Depot for a 0.6 cubic meter freezer dated 2 days before Markham disappeared. There was no freezer in the apartment, so I assumed it should be in the pantry. Of course, it could have many uses. He may have been a hunter and kept the meat of his prey in the freezer, but the deer and elk hunting season was 3 months away. Of course, I had already decided that Bart had something to do with Reggie Markham's disappearance, so it wasn't difficult for me to figure out what I thought the freezer and storage were used for. Bart had a copier on his desk, so I used it to make copies of the receipts and put the originals back in my coat. I took one last look around, locked the door, and left. I drove up to the U-Store at Warehouse on Elmont, went into the office and asked if it was possible to rent a room with electricity. The guy behind the counter told me the prices for rooms of different sizes, and I asked to show the smallest one. On the way to the office, we passed room 201C, which belonged to Bart. I saw that the lock on it was master, and I smiled because I knew I could open it. I looked around the small room and told the seller that I agreed to rent it. We returned to the office, completed the paperwork, I paid for a month's rent, and he gave me the gate code so that I could enter after the office closed for the whole day. I left, went to the hotel, had a snack, and then went to the cinema to kill time. When the movie was over, I went home, changed my clothes, and swapped the car for an old pickup truck that I used for surveillance and undercover activities, as I was going to do. At 10 o'clock, I returned to the warehouse. I entered using the code I was given and drove up to Block 201C. During my previous visit, I was looking for security cameras, but I didn't see any. That didn't mean they weren't there. If there was one that would cover the area containing 201C, it would not have brought much result. The car's license plate light was out, and the license plate itself was stained with dirt, and I was wearing a dark hoodie. It took me only 2 minutes to pick the lock, and once inside, I wasn't surprised to see that there was only a freezer inside. I hesitated to open it because I was almost sure what I would find inside, and I wasn't sure I wanted to see it. I really didn't want to be the one to tell Liz Markham that her husband would never come home. I opened the freezer and my fears were confirmed. I had to break some bones so that I could put my arms and legs in the freezer, but Bart coped with it. I closed the freezer, left the warehouse, locked it, and went home. I had to think about something. I needed to find a way to inform Phil of what I had discovered in a way that would not expose my role in it. I broke several laws while conducting an investigation, and a good defense attorney might have been able to get Bart released or his sentence commuted on some lesser charge if my actions had come to light. Not to mention the fact that I could lose my license. At home, I settled into an easy chair with a large glass of Jack with ice and began to scroll through various scenarios in my head, but I could not come up with anything suitable. I finished my Jack and went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, I thought about the problem again over my morning coffee, but I could not come to an acceptable solution. I decided to just ignore the situation and ignore what was going on. I called Phil and made sure he was in his office. I told him I had something on the Markham case and I'd be there soon. Then I called Liz Markham and offered to meet her for a drink when she finished work. I told her that I had something on her husband. She insisted, but I said I couldn't do it over the phone. She said she'd meet me at Trikaki's at 5:30. On the way to the 10th precinct, my cell phone rang. I turned on Bluetooth and answered the call. It was Frank Parsons from Atlanta. "I've got something for you, damn it. Your boyfriend Bart is in big trouble. He is an avid gambler and is associated with several bookmakers and loan sharks. They wanted their money, and he didn't have it. These guys tend to put those who don't pay on the meter. He left town after almost getting a couple of fractures. There are rumors that he owes more than $80,000, and people are looking for him to either get their money back or make an example of him for defaulters. I have a confidential informant who claims that Bart told one of the loan sharks that he would have some money, and he would pay off if he gave him 90 days. I don't know if any of this will help, but that's all I could dig up. It helps a lot. Thank you, Frank. I owe you a lot." I sat down on the chair opposite Phil and told him everything. "I can't believe you would do something so stupid. Do you think I don't know that? Why? Why did you take such a risk?" It was a cold trail. There were no leads to work with, but deep down I felt that Bart had something to do with it. And I took a chance. You know he would have gotten away with it if I hadn't balked and gone for it. I don't know if I can, but I'll try to protect you from this. Come on, you bastard. You just dumped a lot of shit on me, and I have to decide what to do next. I went back to my office and spent the rest of the day doing paperwork. At 5 o'clock, I left the office and headed to Trikaki to meet Liz Markham. I was sitting in a booth and sipping a beer when she came in and sat down across from me. "Do you have anything for me?" "I have one, but you're not going to like it." I ordered a drink for Liz when I got there and asked Mandy to wait and serve it to the table when my guest arrived. As soon as Liz sat down, Mandy appeared with her drink. "Take some," I said. "You'll need it." She took a sip, and I took a deep breath and said, I found your husband, but he won't come back to your house. He's dead. Her face paled, and she was silent for a few seconds, and then she said, I think I've always known that. It seemed to be the only thing that could keep him from returning home. What happened? I can't tell you now because it's still a police matter. I gave them what I found, and they'll probably contact you in a day or two to let you know what they found. I'd be in deep shit if they found out I told you even that while their investigation was still ongoing. But I felt you had a right to know. He was murdered, and we know who the killer is, but he hasn't been arrested yet, so please don't tell anyone what you know. If the rumors somehow leak out, the killer may hear about it and escape before he is arrested. I'll tell you the whole story as soon as the police officially notify you. Rest assured, I'll tell you everything, but not before a couple of days. She took a long sip from her glass and then said, I think I'll go home and cry. She got up to leave and then turned to me and said, call me as soon as you can. Okay, call me as soon as you get a message from the police, and I'll fill you in. She turned and left. Phil managed to save me from this. I have no idea what he used as a probable reason to go to the warehouse and get into 201S, but the day after I brought him up to date, Bart was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Phil called me at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and said that Bart was with them, and an hour later Liz called and said that the police had notified her that they had found her husband. We agreed to meet at Trikaka's at 5:30. I told her the whole story, and she didn't take it very well. She started crying and said, I killed him. I killed him. It was my fault, and I killed him. I tried to calm her down, but she continued to order drinks and consume them, all the time repeating that it was her fault. She was so out of her mind that I didn't dare let her drive, so I took her home to my place. I took her to one of the spare bedrooms and put her to bed. Then he locked the apartment and went to bed himself. Something woke me up. I looked at my watch and saw that it was 10 minutes past 2. I was woken up by Liz Markham climbing into my bed. Her words were slurred, but I understood them. Give me a hug. Please hug me. I pulled her to me, and we fell asleep together. When I woke up in the morning, she was still fast asleep. I carefully extricated myself from her embrace and stood up. I was on the patio finishing my third cup of coffee when I heard the sliding door open and then close. Liz came and sat next to me, and I noticed that she had found coffee in cups. She took a sip from her cup and then said, I'm sorry. I didn't want to fall apart like that yesterday, but what you said hurt me a lot. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. After a while, she said, you know, I really did it. I killed Reg. I may not have done it, but my meeting with Dave was the reason for it. Nonsense. No, it's not like that. If I hadn't continued to date Dave and thus given him hope, he would have left me alone. And then I foolishly told him that I wouldn't cheat on Reg, but judging by the way things are going, I might be alone again soon, and then we could pick up where we left off in college. Dave obviously understood this so that in Reg's absence he could be with me. Considering what you told me about his gambling debt problem, he couldn't wait 6 months to get a divorce, so he killed Reg to speed up the process. Reg would still be alive if I just ignored Dave when he came to town. What's even worse for me is that I only met Dave to annoy Reggie. Why would you want to know that? Because I'm going to go to the kitchen and make us breakfast. Omelet with cheese, if you have one. At breakfast, she asked me what a bachelor was doing in a 4-bedroom house, and I told her the sad story of how Sandra, with whom we had lived together for 3 years, had been hit by a drunk driver just over 2 years ago, and the other 3 bedrooms were intended for our future children. I'm sorry. I didn't want to bring up a sore subject. I'm used to it. The pain goes away after a while. The memories are still alive, but they are all good. Are you seeing anyone now? No. I'm dating some people, but I'm not sure I'm ready for another relationship. After breakfast, I drove her back to get the car. Before getting out of my car, she leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. After saying thank you, she got out of the car. I sat and watched her get into her car and drive away. When she drove off, I couldn't help but smile. I was in love with her all through high school, and now, after all these years, she kissed me. A week later, Liz came into my office and handed me a check. I tried to refuse, but she wouldn't let me. I hired you to find my husband, and you did it. Do you like being a private investigator? It allows you to pay bills. Would you do something else if you could? I don't know. I have an idea that I would like to discuss with you. Will you have dinner with me tonight? I can do it. Shall I meet you at Emily's at 6? I'll be there. When I arrived, she was already sitting at the table, and she was not alone. I went over to the table where they were sitting, and they both stood up. Damn it. I'd like you to meet my dad, Sam Parkington. Dad, this is Hector Styles. He prefers to be called Heck. We shook hands, and he asked me to call him Sam. I sat down, and as soon as I sat down, the waitress appeared with a drink for me. I took the liberty of ordering for you. That was what you were drinking at Trikaki. Everything is fine? I smiled, agreed, and took a sip. When I put the glass on the table, Sam said, I suppose my appearance here is a surprise to you? Yes. You seem to have made an impression on my daughter, and that's not easy to do. She told me all about what you've done for her, and we discussed it and decided that you might be the one we need. I raised my eyebrows in surprise, and he continued. Parkington Industries has several patents and its own technological processes, and we are the target of industrial espionage. So far, we've been lucky, and we've managed to prevent it, but I don't think we can count on luck forever. Liz convinced me that we need a security unit, and she also convinced me that you should lead it. Perhaps you would be interested in something like this? I looked at Liz and saw that "please" was written on her face. I said I was interested and accepted the job. After a year of working together, I asked her out on a date, and she agreed. I would have done it sooner, but I felt I had to give her time to mourn before deciding on a new relationship. 6 months later, we got married. That's how the missing person case led me to my high school crush and marriage to the boss's daughter. End.